Stellar Evolution is now making best of 2024 lists, and rightfully so. If you haven't already, check out part 1 of the interview. Here in part 2, we dive deeper into his remarkable origin story. At this point in the journey, Aaron is 12. He's in the car with his dad, just now playing a cassette of an entire album he wrote, performed, and recorded in his bedroom all by himself. I get that prodigies aren't that unusual, a little rare maybe, but what's unique for me is that Aaron wasn't just mastering one instrument, but several, and having a vision to bring so many elements together, and the drive to make it happen, and to be able to finish the darn thing. What were you accomplishing in middle school? What were any of us? In terms of grind and flow, Aaron's story has it all. Intentional hacking away at something coming together with happenstance, luck, divine intervention, whatever you want to call it, the flow of the universe. See what you think.
We were driving around in his car, you know. I'd made a little cassette tape of it, and he had it in the car playing. And the first side finished it, and he was like, "Aaron, I got to tell you, you know." My dad was always very honest with me, you know. And he said, "I got to tell you, this is actually pretty good." And he said, "But I'm curious, who's playing all these instruments on this, you know?" And I was like, "Well, I am, you know." And he was like, "You play the drums?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, and the bass and the keys and.
How does he not hear you playing the drums?
You know?
That's the one that's
Well, my dad worked a lot,
okay.
You know, and he worked, you know, long hours, and you know, he would often, you know, his office was in Irvine, which was 45 minutes away from where we lived in San Juan Capistrano, and so a lot of times he'd get home at 8 or 9 at night, past the time where I felt like it was appropriate for me to be playing the drums or whatever. You know, we had this weird neighbor who would call my mom and say, "It sounds like something's exploding over there," you know, and my mom would be like, "Well, my son's a drummer," you know. So.
You've repeatedly called to make the same comment?
Yeah,
Did not sink in?
No, I think he was just being a weird neighbor at a certain point, but yeah, when I made that little album, you know, my dad took it to the music teacher, the instrumental music teacher that I had at school. I was going to this Christian school called St. Margaret's, and they happened to have this really cool music teacher working there named Ira Raybone, who was from Indiana, and back in the 70s had formed a band called the Fabulous Souls, who'd gone on tour with the Jackson 5. And Ira went on to play in Earth, Wind, and Fire. And so he really knew music and knew pop music, you know, really well. And he was a songwriter and a phenomenal vocalist and, you know, multi-instrumentalist. And my dad, you know, kind of called him up and said, you know, "Could we have dinner, you know, with you, my wife and I, you know?" And this is kind of funny, but, you know, part of making the album, I thought, well, Paul McCartney's album has like artwork on it, so I better, like, I got on the computer and made a little cover for the album as well.
Wonderful. Not realizing that he's got a whole staff.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I just thought, well, I guess I should do it myself. And I made little liner notes for the. Yeah, exactly. You know, who I was thanking, you know, and I did thank Ira in the credits, you know, because he was a big inspiration to me, you know, and so my dad brought the tape to dinner, and he said, you know, "My son made this, and if you'll see here in the liner notes, he calls you his inspiration, you know, and I actually think that I think that he might have a talent for this, but as a person who's done this, you know, professionally in a major way, I kind of would love to hear your opinion on that." And so Ira listened to the tape and kind of agreed with my dad, you know, and started really showing an additional interest in me and what I was doing, even in the context of the 6th grade instrumental music class that I had with him, where he would a lot of times give me separate assignments to go work on outside of the rest of the class, where he would say, like, you need to learn how to develop your sense of harmony more. And one way to do that is through jazz music. And so I'm going to give you, this is called a real book. And it's sort of a standard, kind of Bible of music that jazz musicians know there's like 200 songs in this book. Jazz musicians will learn every one of them in all 12 keys that exist and be able to play the melody, be able to play the chords, be able to play a solo over top of it. So we're going to start with one of these songs. So we're going to start with a Duke Ellington song called Take the A Train. And I want you to go spend the class hour, see how many of these chords you can get correct. And I want you to come back at the end and show me what you've worked on and stuff like that. And then outside of class, he was giving me vocal lessons and teaching me the proper technique to sing and not lose your voice and, all of that kind of stuff. Basically preparing me for a life of being a musician and performer for a living.
What an amazing opportunity. And so I can get the timeline right. You mentioned before you went to performing arts school, but this wasn't even at the performing arts school.
This was before that.
Wow. How even like out of the blue, like winning the lottery, you had a rock and roll pop music mentor, like granular down to details, like here's how to do this.
I reckon it, I liken it rather to something like Bill Gates happened to be born down the street from the only library in America that had a computer in it.
Right.
So as a kid, he had access to this amazing thing that informed the rest of his life. That was a similar situation for me. I was just really, really lucky that my parents moved our family all the way across the country to this tiny little town in Orange County, California, where I went to a Christian school that happened to have this guy working as a music teacher at it who was versed in, everything that I wanted to do and be when I grew up.
That really excites me because it also foots up to exactly what this podcast is about, the grind and flow. Certainly the grind, in your hours to learn that.
Yes.
With that flow, like the finger of God. Like you can't plan.
You can't. No way. No way. It's proof that something like God has to exist, and that the energy and the flow of the universe is something that we can find our way into if we're willing to get out of our own way to be there.
Right. So tell me about your journey of going from the bedroom to being on the road and performing.
Yeah.
What was that learning curve?
It was intense. It came with some, pretty big flops. but part of learning that, and this was what was really great about having a person like Ira Rabone, my music teacher around, was he in those moments he was able to explain, you don't succeed up, you fail up. Basically meaning you need to go through these challenges and experiences where it doesn't go well, because it's in the things that you learn from those experiences that you actually get better, because it's interesting. I've been around musicians of all levels since I was a very young person, just being in the world of it, I've seen like virtuoso level, kind of almost savant type, Mozart, young people that just are immediately brilliant. And at a certain point, it kind of plateaus for some of them. And then the scrappy person, who just kept doing it and kept working at it and just got a little better little by little by little, suddenly, in a way, sort of eclipses the virtuosity, because they're able to create something that is unique to them, that makes people feel something. more than I'm impressed by what this person can do musically, which is great. They're able to have their own voice on their instrument or as a writer or whatever it is in this way where even if it's not technically as good as this virtuoso, it makes people feel something that they can't get anywhere else. And that becomes this really unique, special thing that just that one person has. And for me, those were the people that I took the most inspiration from, as a young person. And I think I was able to realize the difference between those two things, because I was good. I was always good, but I was never the best, at anything really. But I just kind of kept going and kept working on it and kept developing my voice and having different kinds of influences and things like that, to a point where I got to a place where what I was doing became recognizable as me, to where the people who follow me now and are fans of me, and there's not, millions of them, but I do have, this really cool, sort of more modest audience of folks who will listen to everything that I do, sincerely, and really give it a chance. A lot of times, even if it's something that they don't understand at first, I love people coming to the show and saying, I really didn't get your new album, but I just kept trying to listen to it, and then all of a sudden last month it hit me, and now it's my favorite thing you've ever done, or something like that. Because I really wanted to be an artist first and foremost. And there is a point where commercialism and art intersect. But I don't know that it's always an equal measure. And I would tend to run towards the art more than the commercial success. And I've lived my life that way, even to a point where people thought I was crazy sometimes. My first band, Semi-Precious Weapons, really took off in a major way and got a record deal, and suddenly found themselves in the position of, we're on MTV and we're, being asked to open the Monster Ball tour for Lady Gaga. And I quit the band at that point. I had been, the principal co-songwriter and co-founder of the group with the singer, Justin Tranter. And I walked away from all of it because, to me, it began to feel like the fame was too big to control. And I could see the people who were kind of in charge of the fame part really weren't concerned with or bothered by the fact that it was at that point sort of a less artistically driven endeavor. And that bothered me. But at the same time, the other members of the band were my friends, and I wanted success for them, and I wanted them to have that success if that's what they wanted. I just knew it wasn't something for me, so I walked away from it, when Perez Hilton and all of these, big blogs at the time and stuff, and Lady Gaga and like all of these giant things, and people just were like, what are you doing? I was 23, and they were just like, what are you, this is insane. This is your chance to be a rock star, And I don't think I wanted to be a rock star. I think I wanted to be an artist.
Were you confident about this at the time, or what was your self-talk?
Oh gosh, yeah, it was tough. It was tough because I was still a young person and I was still forming a lot of opinions about all of these things, you know, and that part of my brain wasn't really fully developed yet. So it was a mix of fear, you know, maybe I really am blowing this, you know, these guys, my old band is out singing the songs that I wrote to sold out arenas. And I'm playing on a Tuesday night in New York City at a bar that holds like 40 people called the National Underground, you know, cover songs. You know, it's not even my own music, you know.
What kept you pushing through?
The desire to create something that would allow me to connect more with myself and more with other people in a way that felt authentic to me. You know, in a way that was untouched by the commercialization of what we do as artists. And that was something that was more pure. Something like Mike Watt, you know, or Kevin Kinney, you know. Something that felt like an expression that you had to put out because it made you feel grounded and connected to the world and the society that you're a part of, not because it was something that you could sell and make money from.
So do you think starting early on in your bedroom, that helped you get hold of what you like to do?
Because there was never a thought, you know, at 11, 12 years old, like there's never a thought of like, you know, well, how much money do I need to, you know, be able to live on, or, you know, or is this the kind of thing that will allow me to make money to live off of or something like that. You just see, you know, bands on TV or live performances or whatever doing their thing, and there's a magic to it, and you just think like, oh, I want to do that, and that's as far as I ever thought about it. You know, I didn't realize all of the things from the business side and all that went into, you know, being a band, even that was really artistically forward, like the Meat Puppets or something like that, you know. I just saw like, you know, band, you know, Nirvana, who I thought was amazing, like singing their songs on MTV. And I thought like, oh, that's cool because like the Meat Puppets aren't celebrities, but this really famous band who are celebrities think enough of their music that they would sing their songs as part of their show. That's the thing that I would like to be if I could be a thing in this.
Right. So what was the journey going from your bedroom to doing it professionally?
Yeah.
And we talked earlier about it was a little different.
Yeah, it was.
So what was the self-talk? Because again, what I think they're applicable here, even if someone's not a musician, like making those journeys and those transitions. How did you go from the bedroom to the stage?
When I was starting to write songs, it occurred to me that the goal was to, you know, as I was saying, to kind of connect with other folks. And if I didn't play them in front of the folks, there was no way to know whether or not that was happening. Right. And I wasn't old, you know, I was 12. I wasn't old enough to play in a bar. But there was a coffee house in downtown San Juan Capistrano called Diedrich's Coffee, where they had music on Friday and Saturday nights, just folk singers and stuff like that, you know. And so had my musician's friend catalog. I found a little, you know, Fender had made this little portable PA system called the Passport. And I thought, if I get that, I'll have my own PA system, my own microphone, you know, and speakers, and I can plug my guitar into it, and I could go into a place like Diedrich's and do a gig there. I'm 12, you know. And I took my guitar down to Diedrich's one day. My mom drove me down there, and I walked into the place, and, you know, it was the middle of the afternoon or something. And I said, is there any way that I could talk to the manager of the coffee house real quick, you know? And they were like, sure. And the manager's name was Elvis. And he walked out from behind the counter, and he looked like Billy Joe Armstrong from Green Day. And I thought, I think I got a chance with this guy. You know, I just need to explain myself properly, you know? And so I said something like, you know, I know I'm just a kid, but like I'm really serious about this, and I've written my own songs, and I was wondering if I could play you one of my songs that I've written, and if you like it, would you give me a chance to sing one night on a Friday or a Saturday? Because I've come in here other times and seen singers in here doing that, and really, like, you wouldn't even have to pay me if you don't want to. Like, I just really want the opportunity to sing in front of some people. And he kind of went, well, let's hear your song, you know. And I played him one of the songs that I'd written off the tape that I made, the Paul McCartney-inspired tape, you know. And when I finished, he was just like, how old are you, man? And I was like, well, I'm 12. And he started laughing, you know, just kind of like, he almost was just like, you know, like, wow, you know, the Stones on this kid, you know. And I think he, you know, sort of really appreciated the bravery that I was exhibiting by, you know, walking in there and trying, you know. And he was like, all right, yeah, I tell you what, you know, we were supposed to have, you know, so-and-so, you know, next week, and they actually had to move it to another date, so we weren't going to have anybody, but if you want to come in and, you know, sing for a couple hours, you know. But he was like, but you have to be able to do 2 hours. I need you to do 2 hours worth of material.
Holy cow.
You know. So I was like, okay. You know, so the next 2 weeks I spent, you know, learning, you know, cover songs, you know, that I was digging. You know, One of Us by Joan Osborne and stuff like that I was hearing on the radio that was simple enough for me to learn and play. And that I also felt was a good match to the music that I was writing myself, because I wanted it to have a certain congruency to it. And I went in there and I played, and you know, a bunch of my friends, you know, who were not school friends, but like music, you know, my guitar teacher, and you know, I guess they were, yeah, you know, technically like my instructors or whatever, but I just, you know, thought of them as my friends, because those were the people I hung out with after school and stuff like that, you know, rather than kids my own age, you know. Right. My guitar teacher, Franco Landi, who was probably in his, you know, late 30s or early 40s at that time, but he wrote songs too, and he had a 4-track and all of those things, so that's who I was relating to, you know, at that age, and wanting to hang out with, even outside of the context of our lessons and stuff. And they all came and brought a couple of people and had a nice little crowd there, and I, you know, and I nailed the gig of what was asked of me. Mm-hmm. And so Elvis was like, let's do it again, you know. And I started playing there regularly, you know, as a 12-year-old, you know, the mental, you know, the self-talk at that time was like that feeling of like, you know, man, you're doing it, you know, like, you know, this is, you know, you're definitely like checking yourself in terms of like, okay, we're still a long ways away from the Paul McCartney album that inspired a lot of this, but, you know, you got to start somewhere. And you were able to prove yourself as a guy who wanted to do this, and then there was additional work that was asked of you that was like that you were going to be required to meet in order to be able to do it, and you've shown yourself that you're willing to take that on and to do a good job at it, and grow, you know, beyond what you even understood you needed to be in order to do this in the first place. And so that's probably a sign that if you can sort of keep that level of humility about what you're doing and not make it about a look at me thing, make it about I'm on a journey to discover what I can do within the context of this, you know, man, you might be able to do this forever.
Cry till you're laughing.
And I could talk forever to people like Aaron Lee Tasjan. Man, with each of my guests, I leave feeling smarter and inspired and hope you take away something as well. I was especially energized by his observation about the scrappy artist grinding away, getting better little by little, eventually having something that eclipses virtuosity. What was that he said? About the scrappy artist being able to create something unique to them that makes people feel something more. Good stuff to mull over. And thank you for listening to Grind and Flow. Please support Aaron Lee Tasjan by streaming or better yet purchasing his work. Start with any album, you can't go wrong. And he's a worthwhile follow on the various social media platforms. And if you haven't already, please follow Grind and Flow on your podcast app of choice and on YouTube and Instagram. Until next time, see ya.